Welcome to the Smart Connector podcast. It's great to see you here. So, I have such an exciting guest for you tonight, Jay Connor. Welcome, Jay.
Hello, Jane. Thank you so much for inviting me to come along on your show.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And what's even more exciting for me is that Jay has an incredible Southern accent, which I absolutely love. And he's in North Carolina, aren't you, Jay?
Yes, right here on the eastern coast, on the coastline here at the beach in a real small town called Morehead City, North Carolina. Only 8,000 people are in Morehead City.
Wow. Okay, so what we're going to talk about today is real estate and raising private finance for real estate, which we tend to call property here in the UK. So this is a very interesting topic to a lot of people in my audience. We were just talking about that beforehand. And Jay is really an expert in this area. He's actually known as the private money authority, and he helps real estate investors raise private finance without having to solicit funds. Now, you might think, oh, come on, that's not possible. But that's exactly the thing that we're going to talk about today. So it's great to have you here, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation, Jay.
I am too, Jane. And I get asked all the time, Jay, how do you have all that private money or private finance available to you and you never ask for money? Well, I'm going to unpack it for your listeners, Jane.
Fantastic. Well, let's get right into it. So before we do, Jay, tell us a little bit about you. What's your background? Have you always been in real estate, or have you been in finance, or how did you come to be this private money authority person?
Sure. Well, thank you for asking, Jane. So I was actually born and raised right here, and my father has been in the housing business or the property business, as you call it, all of my life. And so we have this product here in the United States that some of your listeners may have never heard of. And the product is called manufactured houses, and they're also called mobile homes. Well,
Mm,
my father had a company. He was the largest retailer, the largest seller of mobile homes or manufactured housing in the nation, in the United States. And so and what that product was it's really not mobile. Like you would buy the product, and we have these things called single wides and double wides. And
mhm,
so, anyway, the product would be sold, and it would actually be a permanent dwelling. It was for affordable housing. It was
mm,
affordable housing, is what it was. Well, unfortunately, in the early 2000s, 2001, 2002, the consumer finance for that product went away. The whole industry fell
oh,
out of favor with Wall Street, and they no longer were going to provide loans or back loans for that product.
mm,
Well, I knew, Jane, if I ever got out of mobile homes and manufactured housing, I wanted to become a flipper of single family houses. And a flipper of single family houses, of course, is you buy a house. If it's distressed, you renovate it, you turn around and you flip it and you sell it. Well, that was back in 2003 before HGTV and all those flipping TV shows even started coming on the air. And so my wife, Carol Joy, and I, she's from Texas, we started in 2003 with investing in our first single family house. Now, bear in mind, Jane, back in 2003, I'd never heard of private money. I'd never heard of that world. All I knew to do was go to the local bank, get on my hands and knees, and put my hands underneath my chin and say, please fund my deal. Please give me a loan. That's all I knew to do. Show tax returns, verification of income, and all that kind of stuff. Well, so that's what I did. The first year we only did 3 houses. And then here's where everything changed. Something happened big time in 2009. So from 2003 to 2009, I relied on the local banks. I had never even heard of hard money lenders. I don't even know what that was. So in January 2009, Jane, I was sitting right here at my desk. And I know some of your viewers and listeners probably don't even know what a handset is and a cord, attached to a handset. That's like a landline telephone, right? Well, I sat here at my desk, Jane, January 2009. I had two single family houses under contract to buy. Now, bear in mind, back then, you could get an unsecured line of credit, an unsecured line of credit. Anyway, I called up my banker. His name was Steve at the time. And Steve and I had been doing business for 6 years. He was my funding source. He was my only funding source. And Jane, I told him about these two single family houses I had under contract to buy. And I learned very quickly, Jane, that my line of credit had been shut down and closed with no notice whatsoever. And I said to Steve, Steve, what do you mean you've shut down my line of credit? I've got great credit. I've always made payments on time. Why are you shutting me down? He says, Jay, don't you know there's a global financial crisis going on right now? I said, no, but now you've just given me a financial crisis because I don't have a way to fund these two deals. So I hung up the phone, Jane, and I sat here for a moment, and here's a writer downer. I asked myself a very important question, and that was, who can help me with my problem? Because I had a
Mm,
problem. And by the way, these people going around
yeah.
saying, oh, every problem's an opportunity. I want to throw up. I didn't have an opportunity. I had a problem. And so
Mm.
I immediately thought of a friend that was investing in Greensboro, North Carolina. And I called him up and I told him what happened. He said, Jay, welcome to the club. I said, what club? He said, the club of losing your line of credit at the bank. They shut me down last week. I said,
Oh,
how are you going to fund your deals, Jeff? He says, have you heard of private money? I said, no. He says, have you heard of self directed IRAs? Of course, in the UK, you call those something different. I said, no. And so I hung up the phone and I studied what private money, you all call it private finance. I
mm.
studied what private money is. And you know what, Jane? That was the biggest blessing in disguise of my bankers shutting me down because in less than 90 days, I raised $2,150,000. I don't know what that is in pounds, but
What?
anyway, I raised $2,150,000 in less than 90 days. And I only had $1 million line of credit with the bank. And so my banker did me a favor by shutting me down. And so how did I do that? In essentially, and we'll talk in detail about it if you want to, but essentially what I did is I put together my what I call my private lending program that I was going to start teaching people in my network what I know. So what
Mm.
did I do? I put on my private money teacher hat, and I just started teaching people that I had an association with how they could earn high rates of return safely and securely. Today, we've got 47 individuals, and that's what a private lender is, an
Mm.
individual that's loaning us money on our real estate deals. And you know what, Jane? Not one of them had ever heard of private money. None of them had heard of what we call self-directed IRA accounts where they can use retirement funds, et cetera. And so the way I raised the money without asking for it is I didn't ask anybody for anything. I taught them my program. And
Mm.
then if they loved it, when I had a deal to fund, I would just call them up with the good news phone call and say, look, I got great news. I can now put your money to work on a deal. I've never pitched a deal. I don't ask them if they want to fund the deal. Of course, they want to fund the deal because they've been waiting for me to put their money to work. So, anyway, that's sort of a 30,000 foot view as to how we did it and how we do it.
Right. And I think the interesting thing about that is when people are investing their money, obviously, nobody wants to lose their capital, do they? And so they want to feel safe and secure. And I think the fact that you started teaching this stuff probably made them feel as though, okay, now I understand his process. He knows what he's talking about. He understands this topic in depth. He's not just a fly by night who is asking for our money. And that gave them confidence, I suspect. Am I right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, how do we look after our private lenders? Well, number one, we don't borrow unsecured funds. We back all the promissory notes. How do you say promissory note in the UK?
Well, yeah, promissory note is just, it's a loan, isn't it? It's,
Yeah, same thing. So it's you pronounce it the same. So that promissory note is backed here in North Carolina. It's called a deed of trust.
mm,
Most states in the United States, it's called a mortgage.
mm,
So it's the It's the document, it's the legal instrument that secures that promissory note. So they're just not loaning money out on me signing a piece of paper. All
Mm,
those notes are backed by the mortgage or the deed of trust. So what does that mean? That means if I don't pay them, the property does. And how
mm,
could the property pay them? We have a very conservative loan to value to where we don't borrow more than 75% of the after repaired value of the property. So that really, really keeps it safe for the private lender.
mm. Okay, so I get that. So, 75 you don't borrow more than the 75% of the finished,
Of the
product?
finished. That's
Yeah.
correct.
Yep. Okay, right, I get that. So therefore, they know that there is, even if things went horribly wrong, the property would be sold, and over here, we would say a second charge. I don't know whether you have that kind of thing, but so it would be secured against that property.
Yes, exactly. It works the same way. Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, that sounds really, really fascinating because, as I said, in my network, particularly here in the UK, we have a lot of real estate investors who are still relatively early stage. They're building their portfolios, or maybe they're looking for finance for maybe a small real estate development project. And so they would be very, very interested in this. I think the challenge that a lot of them find is actually getting those deals that stack up in terms of the numbers that you're talking about. That is quite challenging because um, yeah, somehow you have to get a very good deal in the first place, don't
Oh,
you?
absolutely. Well, the two most popular questions I get from new real estate investors is how do I find the deals and
Hmm.
how do I fund the deals, right?
Yeah.
And that's the same here. I mean, in the United States right now, there's nothing in the multiple listing service. There's no inventory. And that goes for finding something to rent or finding something to buy. So all the marketing that we do here in our local area and also in my mastermind group that I share with my members,
Mm.
everything we do is targeted towards owners of properties. So doing business directly with the owners instead of trying to rely on the multiple listing service. I don't know what you call
Mhm.
it in the UK, but that's where realtors list their properties, right?
Yes.
For everybody to see them. And since there's nothing in there, then I mean, I do Google ads, I do
Mhm.
Facebook paid ads, I
Mhm.
do direct mail campaigns to everyone facing foreclosure. I do SEO, search engine optimization on my websites.
Mhm.
So in today's market, you can't be relying just on one or two funnels to have your deal flow coming in.
Yep. Okay, right. So that's very interesting because essentially you are using lots of marketing channels. You're not just going over here. People would go on this search engine called Rightmove, and what you're saying is that that's where obviously all the listings are. That you invest in marketing through channels that any business would invest in marketing in order to get that direct response from the people who have the deals. In other words, the owners
Yes,
of the properties who need to have
exactly.
they need to move fast, or they need something to happen much faster than they would if they put it on the real market.
Exactly. Jane, let me share this while I'm thinking about it. And
Yeah.
that is one of the big secrets. I mean, this is like a foundational, very foundational um, part of being successful in attracting private money.
Mm.
And that is the mindset of the real estate investor that's looking to raise the capital.
Okay.
You see, I hear all the time, particularly from newer investors, they fear rejection. They fear they're not going to be able to, talk anybody into doing this and all that. And we have to eradicate that. First of all, here's my question: how can you be rejected if you're not asking anybody for anything? You're not asking them for money. you have to have the mindset of leading with a servant's heart.
Yep.
Okay? Leading with a servant's heart. And that's in everything we do. That's in talking with our sellers of properties. That's in talking with new potential private lenders. Lead with a servant's heart. And and what I discovered when I started, I mean, I started raising it in January 2009. What I discovered was I am going to be making a huge impact in these individuals' lives that are loaning their money out on our deals. Well, I
Mm.
mean, we had a number of elderly and retired people that came on as private lenders. And my wife, Carol Joy, and I, we've gotten so many thank you notes and in person thank yous of thank you for changing our retirement years. We've been able to do things that we would not ordinarily have been able to do. So, our private lenders are not, I don't think any of them, maybe one of them, one out of 47 is an accredited investor. All of them are just ordinary people that have retirement funds. I mean, we've even had children under 18 years old that received an inheritance from grandparents that came on as private lenders. So if I and how do I leave with a servant's heart? Again, I'm back to my teacher hat. If I'm just
Mm.
sharing with people how they can earn high rates of return safely and securely. And I tell you, over here, I mean, the stock market is so volatile. I mean, they're
Mm.
sick and tired of the stock market. And so they don't have to worry about their investment amount like losing value. And so, again, the mindset, you're serving, you're leading with a servant's heart. And by the way, here's another writer downer. Desperation has got a smell to it. And what do I mean by that? What I mean by desperation has a smell to it. The worst time to be looking to raise capital and raise finance is when you've got a deal and you need money for that deal. That's why I preach and practice still to this day. Focus on getting the money lined up first. There's
Mhm.
always going to be deals. There's always going to be deals. And think
Mm.
about how much more confident, how many more offers you're going to make on properties when you've got the money already waiting to be used.
Yes, that's a very important point, and I've had, clients actually in my program. Some of my clients are, real estate investors, and I've had some, in my program that have been in the situation where they've had a really, really good deal, and they've had to find, private money very fast, and it's not a situation that I would wanna be in myself because that is, it's very, very
Very
stressful,
stressful,
particularly if
very
they put
stressful.
their yeah, and a lot of the time they will have put some of their own money in to secure this deal as well. And, yeah, it's difficult, isn't it?
Yes, well, over here in the US, a popular thing, and I'll call them gurus, real estate investing
Yeah.
gurus, right?
Mm.
And so I've heard it so many times, and I tell you, Jane, it just makes me want to throw up every time I hear somebody give this advice. And what they'll say is they'll say, "Oh, just get the deal under." I bet you've heard this. They'll say,
Yes.
"Just get the deal under contract. The money will show up."
Yep.
And I want to say, where is the money going to show up? Is it just going to like rain out of the cloud or something? It makes absolutely no sense to me. I was a guest on a podcast not too long ago, Jane, and the host and I were having this conversation about why in the world would somebody give that advice. And the host told me, they said, "Jay, I know why they give that advice." I said, "Please tell me." He said, "Because they're selling a program or a course on how to find deals, and they're not teaching anything about raising the money."
Yeah, yeah. And I think the other thing that I think tricks people a little bit is people get very excited about the idea of finding deals. It captures their imagination because they think, "Oh, I'm gonna make this house really beautiful. I'm gonna make loads of money. I'm gonna sell it, and I'm gonna get rich," and all of those kind of things. So they're all excited because essentially they're the buyers. They're in buying mode when they're in that situation. They're buying their house. They're gonna be buying all the refurbishment. They'll be hiring all the people, and so it's always much more fun to be a buyer than a seller. Whereas when you are raising finance, However you do it, you don't have that same feeling of being the buyer. And so people don't really think that through, and they just think, well, I want to be the person that finds the deals, and so they go into these courses and then they learn how to find a deal. But you're quite right, and everything you say resonates. You've got to learn how to raise the finance. You've got to, otherwise,
Exactly.
there's no
And
point.
and Jane, I would suppose over there in the UK, here in the United States, we talk about one way you can fund real estate is by using creative methods such as subject to the existing note, a seller financing. I suppose you have those types of strategies as well in the UK. But I do. I mean, I've bought a lot of houses. We call it buying on terms, is
Hmm.
what we say in the US, buying on terms. And sometimes I'll hear new real estate investors say to me, they say, Jay, I don't need any private money because I just want to buy properties on terms with the seller taking a note back and selling to me, with seller financing, or they'll transfer the deed to me in the title subject to the existing note, and I'll make their payments for them. And I've done a lot of that. But you know what? After all these years, of course, I've reviewed thousands of property lead sheets from
Hmm.
potential sellers. And
Hmm.
here's my statistics. And I'm a pretty good negotiator. My
Hmm.
statistics show that only 13% of those property owners will actually sell to me creatively or on terms. Well, of course, what do the other 87% of those sellers require? Yes, all the money. So, of course,
Hmm.
that's where the private finance or the private money comes into play.
Yeah, that's a very, very powerful statistic. Okay, well, that sounds great. So we've got a question here which says, it's really interesting with private equity investing being an asset. Most difficult is to make connections to these private lenders. And
Mm,
this is something that I hear a lot. If you are, let's just say, you don't necessarily associate with a maybe the people that have the money. Let's say you just started out in your journey, and most of your friends and the people you associate with are just regular working people. What would you say is the best way to actually start making connections with those people that do have the money,
that's an
Jay?
excellent question. And I get that question all the time too. Sometimes my members will say to me, they say, Jay, all my people and my connections are broke. They ain't got any money. And of
Yeah.
course, of course, to begin with, I don't believe them. I think that they're dealing with a fear thing. But let's say that's true. Well, let me answer the question this way. There's three primary categories of people that can be or are private lenders, individuals. So the first category are people that you already know and you have a connection with. The second category of potential private lenders is what I call your expanded market or your expanded network. I'll come back to that in just a second. And the third category of individuals, private lenders, are what we call existing private lenders. They are already a lender, they're already loaning money out. How do you find those people? So let's come back to the expanded market. The
Uh-huh.
expanded market, and I teach this all the time. And Jane, I know you've heard this and said it plenty of times yourself, but there's a direct correlation. We know this. There's a direct correlation with how strong and powerful your network connections are to your net worth, of course.
Mm. Yeah.
So I spend a lot of time teaching my members how to expand your network of people
Mhm.
and connections very, very quickly.
Yes.
So one of my and part of this is getting involved in the community. Here we are back to serving again. We're back
Mhm.
to serving, right? Leading first. And so we have an organization here in the United States, and I'm guessing it's also in the UK, and it's very, very powerful. Do you have in the UK, Jane, an organization called Business Networking International?
BNI.
BNI.
Yes.
Yeah.
BNI, yes.
Yeah. Ivan Meisner, started BNI. I've been very, very involved in even our local BNI here. Well, I recommend to my members, if you want to grow your network, Join BNI. I have raised millions of dollars by just being involved in the local BNI network. Now, our local BNI is small. Of course, in a city, you can have a lot of different BNI, groups,
Mm.
but the way BNI works is you join the local group. Of course, you have to apply, you have to be approved, and odds are you're going to be the only real estate investor in that group. Now, there'll be realtors or a realtor, but the neat thing about BNI is there's only one seat per category of, person. And so BNI, I mean, you will grow your connections so quickly because the purpose of BNI and being a member of BNI is to share leads and pass leads to each other, right?
Mm.
As far as what you're looking for. And one powerful thing about BNI is you have the weekly meeting, but then you're encouraged and even required to have what's called one-on-ones. And a one-on-one is you meet one of your other fellow BNI members for lunch or for coffee or for breakfast or whatever, and you learn from your fellow BNI member what it is they do, what's their ideal client, who are they looking to get in front of, and vice versa. You share who you're looking to get in front of. So I used BNI not only to network for real estate deals and properties, but I
Mm.
used it primarily to offer my private lending program. And when I say private lending program, I'm not talking about a course. I'm talking
Mm.
about what is the private lending program that we're teaching and offering to potential private lenders. So
Yeah.
I would just simply say to my BNI member, when you hear, so there's a magic phrase here,
Mm.
magic
Yeah.
phrase that we
Mhm.
use for not asking. It's called, I need your help. I need your help. And so what I just say to people is, I would say, when you run across someone that is complaining about their investments, complaining about getting no money on a certificate of deposit at the local bank or the volatility of the stock market, would you refer them to me and I'll show them how they can get high rates of return safely and securely? So get involved. If it's not BNI, the Rotary Club, you got Rotary Club International, right? And that's more of a longer term play. That's more of a longer term play because that's a civic group. But that's a long answer to this short answer. Join networking groups.
Yeah, yeah. So I think the interesting thing about that, and I can only really talk from my own experience here in the UK, is that a lot of investors will go to property networking groups and or real estate networking groups, as you would say. And the issue with that is that they go along because there's usually it's an educational thing as well. So there will be people talking about how to find deals or how to get a really good deal or how to work with a get a great broker or something like that that is obviously of interest to them, how to turn a house into an Airbnb or something like that. But the problem they have is that everybody who is there is that they're all real estate investors or they're all looking to be real estate investors. And I've sometimes said this to my clients as well, is that I mean, because 'cause I've done a little bit of this as well, and, my investors were people that I met, met everyday life. So met at the school gates, uh, met out dog walking. They're just regular people. And the people that you get at the real estate meetings, they will be people that there are, very experienced people there, but they will be looking for much higher returns because that's why they're there. Whereas it's the regular people, isn't it? Who
Oh
they're
yeah,
not, yeah,
that's the key, Jane. I mean, oh,
yeah,
and I didn't get to the third category. So
oh
the
yeah.
third category of private lenders are what you just said. They are existing private lenders. They're already
Mm.
loaning money out. Well, that's a whole different game. That's
Uh-huh.
a whole different conversation because you see, when you're talking to an existing private lender, you're not putting on your teacher hat. They already know what private money is. They already
Mm.
know and they already know the kind of returns that they're looking to get. So guess what? I don't do business with private lenders that have already been doing private lending. I mean,
Mm.
all of my private lenders, all 47 of them for personally myself, not one of them had ever heard of what private money was. They didn't know what private lending is. So guess what? Therefore, I get to make the rules. When you borrow money from the bank, they make the rules. They set the interest rate, they set the term. But when you got your teacher hat on, I'm teaching. Well, in this program, for example, I pay 8%. Well, an
Mhm.
existing private lender would laugh at 8%.
Yeah.
They
They'd be
they would
more like 12%,
Oh, yeah,
15%.
at least 12%, and the existing private lender is gonna charge points or origination fees. Well, you
Mm.
see, I've never paid a point. I've never paid origination fees. I've paid a straight 8% ever since 2009,
Mhm.
and I set the term, the frequency of payments, all that. And so it's like they're learning about well, like when I started in 2009, uh, a 12-month certificate of deposit in the local bank got all the way down to a return of only a quarter of a percent.
Mm.
Well, 8% was fantastic over putting your money in the bank. Well, I still pay 8% today. Well, guess what? Today you can get 5% at the local bank, right?
Mm.
But guess what? 8% is still a whole lot better than 5%.
It absolutely is. Well,
So,
totally.
when you're doing business with people that have never heard of it, you are like their savior. They go like, wow, I didn't know I could get that kind of rate of return. So if you're talking to an existing private lender, now it's a negotiation.
Yeah.
Now it's a negotiation. But when you put on your teacher hat and you're showing people that have never been in this world before, there's
Mhm.
no negotiation. You're just simply educating them on what they can do.
Yeah, and, I love that because what a great idea that you can essentially you've got a program or call it a I know you don't call it a program, but you are teaching them what private investment into real estate actually is, what it looks like, and so they can consider it as opposed to you turning up with your hand out and saying, "Hey, I've got a great deal. Would you like to lend me money?"
Exactly. It's a whole different conversation. And again, lead with the servant's heart. Lead with the servant's heart.
Yep, yep. And, I've got another question here. So, actually, somebody's asking me which networking groups in London or UK are useful, and there, in that respect, I would say, please send me a direct message, and I will come back to you because, there's a lot over here, as you can imagine. But it is important to choose a business specific networking group because otherwise you will be with these professional investors who, they're looking to take half the profit, or they are looking to charge very high interest rates. And you've got to be very careful because if somebody wants to charge 15% for a top up on the bank rates, then that is going to eat into your profit. And you could very quickly, with without too much trouble, end up with nothing, right?
Or in the red, as we say.
Yes, exactly, and nobody wants that, do they?
No, nobody likes a bloody deal.
Yes, yes, exactly, exactly. Yeah, so it's funny really because, exactly the same principles apply really over here in the UK, even though the market is very different. We live on an island, it's very crowded, it's very real estate is very expensive compared to some parts of the US because there's obviously a lot more land in the US. We have a problem with overpopulation. There's a lot of people, there's a lot of immigration, there's not enough housing stock in this country. So it's very,
Mm.
very difficult to get deals. And I think for that reason, it's not just obviously finding the right investors, but it's also actually finding the right deals. But then how many people are doing what you do and actually approaching it with a professional marketing hat on and investing money into professional marketing tools like Google Ads and all of those things that you mentioned. So, that is obviously very important, isn't it, Jay?
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, here's the thing. My advice is if you're interested in getting into real estate and you haven't done your first deal yet,
Mhm.
then don't approach this as a hobby. Do not approach this as a hobby.
Mm.
Approach this as a serious business. And by the way, if you are brand new, I mean, one question I get all the time, Jane, is if I could do it all over again, what would I
Mm.
do different? There's one big thing I would do different. Starting
Okay.
out in real estate, my first I was in investing in real estate and properties for 6 years before I sought after a coach to work
Uh-huh.
with. And if I had it all over to do, I would have started out with a coach such as the brilliant Jane Baylor. Start out with a coach that can hold me by the hand instead of me trying to figure all this stuff out by myself. And I'll tell you another big key to success that I've experienced is be very careful about who you are hanging around. My wife, Carol Joy, and I, we are in three different mastermind groups. And, Jim Rohn, and they're all real estate investing. And
Yeah.
Jim Rohn, the late great Jim Rohn,
Yeah.
was attributed with the quote of "You are the average of the five people that you spend the most time with." So you want to
Mm.
be very, very intentional. You want to be hang around people that are like-minded. And if you need some suggestions on what groups to get involved with and be like-minded, Jane Baylor can tell you,
Oh,
particularly in the
thank you.
UK.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's very interesting because I love that quote. And in fact, I'm a big fan of Jim Rohn for so many different reasons. A very, very important quote, but I think it often gets misinterpreted. And I've heard people say you're the average of the five people you spend the most time with. And what they're really talking about is your net worth. So if you hang around with five very, very wealthy people, you will become wealthy. And I always qualify that by saying it's not about how much money people have got, it's about their values. Because if you hang around with rich people who they're really only interested in enriching themselves and their family, and they see you as, okay, somebody who's just there to make them feel better about themselves, then they're not going to be bringing any value to you. So it has to be a reciprocal thing. You have to show up with value. They have to have value to give to you. And that value can't be measured in the first instance in monetary terms. I don't know if you'd agree with that, Jay.
Oh, I agree with it 100%. And I'm so glad in fact, when you said it, I just got a chill down my back because it was
Oh.
so meaningful. And I'm glad you really explained that because that's so true. That is so true. For you to have a meaningful relationship with someone else, it's a two-way street. It's a
Mhm.
two-way street.
Always.
And as you just pointed out, Jane, the foundational values. I mean, what's really important to you? They got to sync up or it's not going to be happening.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, so, Jay, you've got a couple of giveaways, haven't you? Would
I
you like to
do.
talk about those, which is
Ab-
amazing, talking about
absolutely.
values? Yeah, and
Absolutely.
value.
And so I'm all about giving back. So I've got two gifts.
Mhm.
And the gift is going to be, and this is all about raising private money,
Yeah.
and capital, private finance for your properties. And by the way, even though most of what I've done is single family houses, I've done shopping centers as well. I've done
Mhm.
condominiums, townhouses. So here's the deal: whether you're interested in single family properties or multifamily properties or apartment complex, etc., the principles are the same. The
Mm.
principles are the same. So now, two different gifts. If you are in the UK, if you're in the
Mhm.
UK, I've got a downloadable free ebook, and the name of the ebook is Seven Reasons Why Private Money Will Skyrocket Your Real Estate Business and Help You Build Incredible Wealth. You can download this free private money guide at www.jayconnor. By the way, I'm an ER, not an OR. So www.jayconnor conner.com/money guide. So that's jconner.com/money guide. Now, if you are here in the United States, I have a book that you cannot get in ebook form. We actually 3-day priority mail it to you. And the name of this book is Where to Get the Money Now, subtitle, How and Where to Get Money for Your Real Estate Deals Without Relying on Traditional or Hard Money Lenders. So I'll autograph this book for you. You can get it on Amazon for $20, but you might as well get it for free, just covers shipping. And you can get the book. I'll rush it out to you at www.jconner.com/book, BOOK. So jconner.com/book. We'll 3-day priority mail it to you.
Well, that's fantastic, Jay. And what we're going to do is we'll put that in the social media post. So this is obviously going out as a live stream. So we'll make sure that those links are either in the comments or in the posts themselves. And if you're listening to the podcast, we will also make sure they're in the show notes. So make sure you grab yourself a copy, whether you're in the US or elsewhere in the world. Ebook if you're elsewhere in the world, and a physical copy, which is amazing because it's always lovely to have something you can hold in your hand, right? If you're in the US.
Absolutely. Jane, thank you so much for having me on. What a lovely conversation with you.
Oh yeah, it's been so great. And at the beginning, you weren't really sure whether what you had to say would be right for my audience, but I can tell just from the comments in the live stream that it's really hit home. And thank you so much, Jay, for creating so much value today. It's been amazing. Thank
You are
you.
certainly welcome, Jane. Thank you for having me.
Bye bye for now.